strong. These are ideas that appeared in the previous section that relate to what we'll read tonight. The notion of I need do nothing can be viewed as a statement of allegiance of a truly undivided loyalty where there's nothing that little I need do because I trust fully in Holy Spirit's plan. I have no plan B of my own. And we read last night that many have spent a lifetime of devotion in seeking to have an instant of release from the prison of the ego. And we're told that your way will be different. The way of the Course in Miracles will be different, not in purpose, but in means. And the means is a holy relationship, a means of saving time. It's a type of instant with where a brother's union with our brothers is restored in our awareness. And we already have everything that we need to attain that experience. It says it would be far more profitable now merely to concentrate on this than to consider another plan or another way. All this results in saving time through a joining with our brothers. And this is the special means this course uses to save time. And if you don't use that, you're not making use of this course and its means. It would wind up there. And we say this because there's a very strong temptation of the ego to want to try your own ingenious approaches to how to prepare for love. That quiet inner center within each of us, a place of rest that is within us. It's a place where the Holy Spirit has come and will remain. And that sets us up for the little garden. We'll call that place tonight the little garden.
It is only the awareness of the body that makes love seem limited. For the body is a limit on love. The belief in limited love was its origin, and it was made to limit the unlimited. Think not that this is merely allegorical, for it was made to limit you. Can you, who see yourself within a body, know yourself as an idea? Everything you recognize, you identify with externals, something outside itself. You cannot even think of God without a body, or in some form you think you recognize.
Course in Miracles comes from this perspective. To our minds, each of us are an idea within the universal mind. To a mind, you are an idea. And an idea can endure forever and can expand by being shared. It has no boundaries on it, is in fact limitless. And why is, and this would be the basis for reality as the Holy Spirit experiences it. A limitless collection of ideas which are not separate, but which share a common purpose and therefore are in fact the same essence. Contrast that with the idea that we are bodies, the ego concept that we are bodies that are very time-bound and limited in one place only and for a very short period of time. And you can see how the concept of a body is extremely limiting. And this belief is a limit on love. It forms the center of the ego's thought system that love can be limited and therefore you are limited. Going beyond the body as a concept of self so that you can claim your limitless nature, your eternal nature, your unlimited loving nature that God gave you.
I love this last sentence. You cannot even think of God without a body or in some form you think, you recognize. Like, that hit me because, I always tried to picture God. I never really realized that until I read that sentence. And that's just trying to picture form.
The emphasis here is the minute we do that, we put it in the idea of God inside a container that is determined by our concept of God. And those can be thought of as stepping stones, those containers. They're not bad, but we don't want to remain on the first step. We want to continue to move on. And in order to move on, we have to move beyond our initial containers, those limits. And so, Susie, of course we do it with God. Each of us does the same thing to ourselves. Our concept of ourself is very limited and defined usually by the experiences that we've had. And so we take that same sense of limited thinking and project it on the God. It's not surprising that we do that. We learn to laugh at that, as that was what we did before we knew better. And now we're not bound by those limitations. We have certainly instants, if not longer periods, where we're free of that. And that's the whole purpose of this course, is not to feel bad about what the limits we've lived under, but to smile gently at them and let them go and move on.
Yeah, actually, it's so important that Christ came to inform, to show us God, because he knew that we needed something with skin on that we could relate to. So it's like the abstract was, we needed something more. We needed to see something. We needed to see the word in action. So they know that we are what we're made of, and that we need to see someone that can embody that. And that's one of the reasons Christ volunteered to come.
Yes, and this might be a moment to remember what is the second coming in A Course in Miracles. It's already happening. It's a current thing. And look around you. These are the hands. These are the eyes. These are the ears. These are the mouths that give voice to the Christ vision in this day, in this era. And in 100 years from now, there will be other eyes and ears and mouths and hands that will give form to that. So we're not against the fact that forms are used, but we don't limit ourselves to believing that the form is sacred or that the form is divine. We realize the form is but a symbol, a temporary learning device that represents for us some meaning that is actually an unlimited in nature.
The body cannot know. And while you limit your awareness to its tiny senses, you will not see the grandeur that surrounds you. God cannot come into a body, nor can you join him there. Limits on love will always seem to shut him out and keep you apart from him. The body is a tiny fence around a little part of a glorious and complete idea. It draws a circle, infinitely small, around a very little segment of heaven, splintered from the whole, proclaiming that within it is your kingdom, where God can enter not.
So this is where I get the metaphor of looking through a straw. If you look through a straw, you see a small circle, infinitely small. And so what you see is just a fragment of what is actually a much bigger picture. Body is like that. It has very limited sensory apparatus, eyes, ears, sense of smell and touch, and filters all of reality through those senses, and then comes to believe that the things that enter into its senses are define reality. In truth, it's just a tiny little circle, infinitely small, around something that is much, much greater. You know this. It's about limiting your awareness to the tiny senses, and thereby, here's the error, thereby not seeing the grandeur that surrounds you, missing the bigger picture. Transcendence is in the union of both of those things. I can focus on something, let's say a beautiful rose, for instance, and totally appreciate the attributes of that rose. So that's a zooming in, and then also be able to zoom out and recognize that that rose is a part of an infinite creation, an infinite jigsaw puzzle, an infinite matrix, that they are in fact part of each other, so that we're not limiting love. We're seeing what our senses recognize, but we're not limited by it. But we don't want to be always stuck on focusing on the microscopic. We want to be able to zoom out and appreciate the grandeur. And there's an art to that.
Within this kingdom, the ego rules, and cruelly. And to defend this little speck of dust, it bids you fight against the universe. This fragment of your mind is such a tiny part of it that, could you but appreciate the whole, you would see instantly that it is like the smallest sunbeam to the sun, or like the faintest ripple on the surface of the ocean. In its amazing arrogance, this tiny sunbeam has decided it is the sun. This almost imperceptible ripple hails itself as the ocean. Think how alone and frightened is this little thought, this infinitesimal illusion, holding itself apart against the universe. The sun becomes the sunbeam's enemy that would devour it, and the ocean terrifies the little ripple and wants to swallow it.
Taking what we see through the little straw and believing it to be all enormous inside. This is what the ego inflation is. The ego takes its little perception and creates a whole view of the world out of its narrow slice, its smallest sunbeam. It confuses that with the source of all sunlight. The same idea of faintest ripple on the surface of the ocean.
It reminds me of the, the wonderful line that says, salvation is a game happy children play, that this is like a child's story. And it's just so, I just love the way it's written. It just appeals to me on that level. It's like, it's just so precious that we think about ourselves, this is so childish, but it's childlike too. It's just precious to think of it like, from that perspective, that this is a bedtime story for us as adults. I love it.
And that attitude of it's just childish makes it much easier to laugh at the ego and let it go. One thing is sure, you can attempt to fight the ego, but you cannot free yourself of it by struggling with it. But if you just laugh it off then it's easy to let it go because it no longer holds any importance. Childlike attitude can be very healing here.
Yet neither sun nor ocean is even aware of all this strange and meaningless activity. They merely continue, unaware that they are feared and hated by a tiny segment of themselves. Even that segment is not lost to them, for it could not survive apart from them. And what it thinks it is in no way changes its total dependence on them for its being. Its whole existence still remains in them. Without the sun, the sunbeam would be gone. The ripple without the ocean is inconceivable.
Every little sunbeam is a part of the enormous contribution of the sun. So in reality, there is an integration, a union. But from the perspective of a single sunbeam, from the ego's perspective, that its tiny kingdom describes all of reality, this gets confused.
Such is the strange position in which those in a world inhabited by bodies seem to be. Each body seems to house a separate mind, a disconnected thought, living alone and in no way joined to the thought by which it was created. Each tiny fragment seems to be self-contained, needing another for some things, but by no means totally dependent on its one creator for everything, needing the whole to give it any meaning, for by itself it does mean nothing, nor has it any life apart and by itself.
Self-talk in the conventional sense is the words we tell ourselves about anything. A lot of times we do it silently, but some people speak it out loud, talk to themselves out loud. And inherent in that seemed to me to house a separate mind, disconnected, living and alone, in no way joined to something greater. It's the notion of private thoughts that are my own. And this is the framework in which ego thinking operates. Each thought seems to be self-contained, totally independent. And so this is the illusion we're seeking to undo, because we later find out in the workbook, my meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. And any idea by itself, separate from anything else, does not mean anything. It has no life apart and by itself. So we're moving from separate ideas, private thoughts, to the thoughts that can be shared and joined with others, thoughts that the Holy Spirit sponsors. It's the beauty of the Holy Spirit. She sponsors a series of ideas that can be shared by everyone in all of creation. And that's what gives it meaning, that those ideas are shared by everyone.
Like to the sun and ocean, yourself continues, unmindful that this tiny part regards itself as you. It is not missing. It could not exist if it were separate, nor would the whole be whole without it. It is not a separate kingdom ruled by an idea of separation from the rest, nor does a fence surround it, preventing it from joining with the rest and keeping it apart from its creator. This little aspect is no different from the whole, being continuous with it and at one with it. It leads no separate life because its life is the oneness in which its being was created.
The truth is true. It may seem that there's a little fence that surrounds this tiny set of ideas called the ego's kingdom. It may seem that way, but that is not the truth, because there is only one mind, and this aspect is no different from the whole, being continuous with it and one with it. It was created as one and remains as one. So we have two perspectives here. The perspective of the ego, that it has a private gig going, and the perspective of your true self, your super self, that's unmindful that there's a tiny mad idea that regards itself as separate. And herein lies the choice. You get to choose which one you wish to identify with.
Do not accept this little fenced off aspect as yourself. The sun and ocean are as nothing beside what you are. The sunbeam sparkles only in the sunlight, and the ripple dances as it rests upon the ocean. Yet in neither sun nor ocean is the power that rests in you. Would you remain within your tiny kingdom, a sorry king, a bitter ruler of all that he surveys, who looks on nothing, yet who would still die to defend it? This little self is not your kingdom. Arched high above it and surrounding it with love is the glorious whole, which offers all its happiness and deep content to every part. The little aspect that you think you set apart is no exception.
One point of view of its little tiny kingdom, believing that that's all important and that that's the center of the universe, and the other perspective, which is an unbounded perspective that realizes that it's just a part of the whole.
It is a children's story. Somebody took that and turned it into a children's book.
Oh,
It's called The Sunbeam and the Wave.
nice.
Yeah, these
So
are, of course,
how fitting, because that's exactly, they have this double metaphor going on with the sunbeam and the ripples in the wave.
well, they took it out of the Course in Miracles.
They sure did.
Yeah. And
Lovely.
I think, yeah.
Well, Julia, you are just full of interesting, helpful information. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Well, just to stay on that theme, it's like a fairy tale, right? Like the Wicked Witch, who is the ego, always tries to do something to the person, but can only put them to sleep, right? And then the prince comes and wakes them up, and that's the Holy Spirit. I mean, Heather's right. It's reminding me of a fairy tale.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
And because we're happy children, we can appreciate it.
You know, I was thinking the same thing, Heather, that this is not accidental, that this, can I use the word triggers our inner child, our playful, lighthearted self, for that is therapeutic. That is the way we finally laugh at the ego and just move on without any struggle at all. For we're simply happy to put away children's stories.
Love knows no bodies and reaches to everything created like itself. Its total lack of limit is its meaning. It is completely impartial in its giving, encompassing only to preserve and keep complete what it would give. In your tiny kingdom, you have so little. Should it not then be there that you would call on love to enter? Look at the desert, dry and unproductive, scorched and joyless, that makes up your little kingdom. and realize the life and joy that love would bring to it from where it comes and where it would return with you.
So my question is to you, what is the meaning of love according to this paragraph? Its total lack of limit is its meaning. It couldn't be any clearer. It's completely impartial in its giving. It encompasses only to preserve. So you can think of it infinitely expanding, boundless, ever extending, without limit of time, nor space, nor resource. It reaches to everything created like itself. It seeks divine union with everything like itself.
It just reminds me of that there is no limit to spiritual growth. So there's no limit. It's the same thing, spiritual growth. What's spiritual growth? Love, love, love. So there's no limit. I love that.
An infinite God is infinitely expanding his infinite love throughout eternity.
Yeah, I just can't help but think of the Trinity. That's why he needed something to pour it into. It was so limitless. It was so much that he needed someone else to pour it into. So he had to create other parts of himself to be able to share it. And so it is with us. It says that, you know, that graciousness is from a love saturated soul. When our heart is love saturated, we want to share that. We want to pour it out. We want to pass it on.
Mhm.
It's just the nature of that it's giving and flowing like that.
Using the same concept that Vienne just shared, you go up the ladder and then you come back down with the gifts that you acquired up there. Tonight, we just talk about you go into your inner peaceful kingdom, your inner little garden, receive the blessing and the insight and understanding. And then what do? Do you stay there for the rest of your life? Well, what you do is the world calls you to engage with people and you bring that light out with you to share with others. And it's really the same concept that Vienne just shared of bringing the light down the ladder that you had received.
It just reminds me of a couple weeks ago when we bring our darkness to the light.
Yes.
And then we bring, after we receive that, the light back to somebody else's darkness. Same thing.
You're connecting the dots, Susie. We're just saying the same thing over and over again, using light and dark, ladders, gardens. Yeah, all in an effort to help you to see that it doesn't matter how we describe this. What matters is that we experience it. The course is, this is the way the course is written. It's written using multiple symbol systems with the idea that you'll find some that really speak to you. They may not all speak to you, but surely you can find some that really touch you.
A good teacher always does that. You know, they have lots of ways to teach different kinds of students. So they have a way of being able to retell the story in many different ways so that everybody gets it.
The thought of God surrounds your little kingdom, waiting at the barrier you built to come inside and shine upon the barren ground. See how life springs up everywhere? The desert becomes a garden, green and deep and quiet, offering rest to those who lost their way and wander in the dust. Give them a place of refuge, prepared by love for them where once a desert was. And everyone you welcome will bring love with him from heaven for you. They enter one by one into this holy place, but they will not depart as they had come alone. The love they brought with them will stay with them as it will stay with you. And under its beneficence, your little garden will expand, and reach out to everyone who thirsts for living water, but has grown too weary to go on alone.
Mhm. So we might not have recognized it before, but it's clear here that this garden within, this little garden, was a desert before. Our own world of ego identity, the belief that we have separate private thoughts and live as separate selves, is a desert. And the desert becomes a garden prepared by love for them where once a desert was. So this describes our journey up the ladder from the experience of a meaningless thoughts showing us a meaningless world, which is a desert. A meaningless world is a desert, becomes a lush place of refuge, a garden with a slice of heaven within it. And that's where we welcome our brothers to join us, in the garden of heaven, not in the desert of meaninglessness. So everyone you welcome will bring love with him from heaven for you. And so this echoes holy relationships, experiencing holy instance. We read about this yesterday. What is the means given in this course? A holy relationship with our brother, welcoming one by one into this holy place. And each of us knows how there are people in your own life where you may not have completely welcomed them to share your inner heaven with you. And that becomes the best teacher of this program, the best teacher of forgiveness, because when we have that artificial sense of separation with someone, there's so much to learn right there to get to the point where we welcome them into our own garden, our own slice of heaven. And that's how we join with people. Under this beneficence, your little garden will expand and reach out to everyone. This is the infinite expansion, the limitless expansion. Everyone who thirsts for living water.
Go out and find them, for they bring yourself with them, and lead them gently to your quiet garden and receive their blessing there. So will it grow and stretch across the desert, leaving no lonely little kingdoms locked away from love and leaving you inside. And you will recognize yourself and see your little garden gently transformed into the kingdom of heaven with all the love of its creator shining upon it.
I see a total extension of love, welcoming people, extending, I feel like a big heart opening, like let everybody come who's weary and tired. And I don't know, I feel like crying actually. This is really, I just feel a big extension of love.
I see the sonship ascending.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's nice. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And there's this transpersonal theme here. Go out and find them, for they bring your self, your super self, with them. And in this process, you will recognize your true self, and see your little garden transform into the big picture. Susie, this is the extension. What we thought was our private garden might have envisioned it as a step. These are stepping stones. Starts out as a desert, transformed into a little garden. We welcome more people into it. The garden expands, and the little garden is gently transformed into the kingdom of heaven with all the love of its creator shining on it. Course in Miracles, very progressive this way, from desert to a little garden, an expanding garden that eventually expands without limit to include everything and everyone. Julia?
This group is our garden.
Oh, so sweet. Say it again.
I said this group is our little garden.
Julia, you get a kiss for that. That is so sweet. This group is our little garden. That is so lovely. It is, brother.
The holy instant is your invitation to love, to enter into your bleak and joyless kingdom, and to transform it into a garden of peace and welcome. Love's answer is inevitable. It will come because you came without the body and interposed no barriers to interfere with its glad coming. In the holy instant, you ask of love only what it offers everyone, neither less nor more. Asking for everything, you will receive it. And your shining self will lift the tiny aspect that you tried to hide from heaven straight to heaven. No part of love calls on the whole in vain. No son of God remains outside his fatherhood.
We read earlier, what is the meaning of love? Its meaning is in its lack of limits, its limitlessness, its boundlessness. In describing, you ask of love only what it offers everyone. That's an unlimited list of the sonship that David mentioned. And it speaks of asking for everything. And then it refers to, it calls on the whole, and that nothing and no one remains outside of his fatherhood, which is infinite, of the wholeness. David?
Be sure of this. Love has entered your special relationship and entered fully at your weak request. You do not recognize that love has come because you have not yet let go of all the barriers you hold against your brother. And you and he will not be able to give love welcome separately. You could no more know God alone than he knows you without your brother. But together, you could no more be unaware of love than love could know you not, or fail to recognize itself in you.
And so whether it be a desert or a little garden or the entire kingdom, all that is just a matter of time. Correction. So matter of forgiveness. It's all an illusion of a desert. It's an illusion of separation. I think it says that in the last paragraph, Jane, that there's no separation. It's an illusion of separation into a desert. And it's actually a happy dream of a little garden. That too is an illusion because the truth is it's the entire kingdom of heaven, but that can't be seen from the while we have hold on to the barriers against our brother. It's not that the kingdom of heaven's not there. It's just that we cannot see it or appreciate it. It's we haven't yet remembered it. Why? Because of the barriers that we've held on to.
You have reached the end of an ancient journey, not realizing yet that it is over. You are still worn and tired, and the desert's dust still seems to cloud your eyes and keep you sightless. Yet he whom you welcomed has come to you and would welcome you. He has waited long to give you this. Receive it now of him, for he would have you know him. Only a little wall of dust still stands between you and your brother. Blow on it lightly and with happy laughter, and it will fall away. And walk into the garden love has prepared for both of you.
Who are they referring to when it says, he whom you welcomed has come to you and would welcome you? He's waited long to give you this. Well, actually, that's not really the best question, because it tells us many times that we've invited the Holy Spirit in to our inner plane of reality to share and to guide us. But it also says tonight that we are to welcome our brothers into it as well. We enter into this peaceful place. We're not to keep it by ourselves, obviously, but to welcome others into it. It's all a metaphor for sharing the holy instant with our brothers. Oh, that's a nice way to think of it, Jane. Instead of a veil, it's just a wall of dust. From dust you have come, from dust you shall return.
You know, I love this again. You know, he has waited long to give you this. Holy Spirit is always there, right? He's waited. You know, I was saying yesterday how it always says, Holy Spirit is always there. So that comes up for me that way. And you know what comes up for me also? Only a little wall of dust stands between you and your brother. It's that little willingness, just only a little bit of willingness.
We are the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is us. And in that, in our truth, of course, the Holy Spirit never leaves us. It's never lost, even if we think that it might be, but it can't be because it's us. It's truly our idea, our full identity. Blow on it lightly. I think the dust is that we don't know that we have to blow it away so that we can see it within us, just like dust on furniture. You have to blow it away or move it away so you can see the furniture. We are the Holy Spirit. That is our truth. Thinking the ego is being vicious or capricious, that, well, it might try, but it's not going to succeed. It can't succeed in truth.
You know, for the longest time, the metaphor in the Course where it refers to the veil of separation, and this goes back to Old Testament symbolism, where in the Temple of Jerusalem, there was this great veil, and behind it stood the Ark of the Covenant. And only the high priest was able to go back there. None of even the other priests, temple priests, had never seen what's behind the veil. So it became a symbol of separation from the people and the most holy object of Israel, a veil of separation. And for years, I didn't understand what all that. And so the veil didn't mean anything to me. I struggled with that symbol. But I think tonight I have a new one, a little wall of dust between you and your brother. Blow on it lightly and it will fall away. Somehow that is easier for me to relate with, especially I live right by the beach here. So there's all this sand and dust and everything. So I just shared that. I hope that was helpful for people. We're again, multiple forms of words and symbols, all trying to convey an inner experience of barriers between our artificial sense of self, our ego self, and the holiness within us. All that is but a wall of dust. And the Course is so helpful in that it indicates the special means given by this Course is to just remove the little wall of dust that stands between you and your brother. And in doing that, you have broken away this illusion of separation. Julia?
I just got the idea to get one of those leaf blowers.
You're gonna give it the high-powered version and blow it away, right? These metaphors, we encourage you to come up with your own understanding of what the metaphors mean. Work with them, play with them. I believe they were written in a mythopoetic language for the very purpose of expanding the mind. As Heather said, a teacher will work with many different angles to try to teach you. So let these be learning devices for you.
I really love, because after Julia said, this is like our little garden, I got the feeling like, oh yeah, I want to extend this to so many others so they can be a part of our little garden and have the same thing. And that's what it's all about, right? Including all of our brothers and wanting to extend that. And as soon as she said that, I'm like, yeah, let's invite more people to our garden. It was just a cool feeling. The extension, just like that paragraph,
It's very fascinating you said that. You were meant to say that, Susie, because I had the thought today, I don't think I've ever encouraged y'all to bring others and tell others about this class. But I was thinking about that today, and given what it feels like in this moment, if you feel moved to invite someone else to join a class, it's a new year, it's a new day, it's a beautiful garden. So have that as a thought in your mind and let Holy Spirit guide you as to who that might be. Thank you all. To our little garden.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jonica.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you
Namaste.
so much.
Love you all.
God to all.
Love you all.
Thank you.
Much love. Happy evening.
Mhm.
You know what was really great about